Hi all and welcome to the live stream. I'm going to be turning the camera around in a second so that you can see the panel. We won't be answering any questions till about 1:15. I love that you just waved. I know, but hi Mom! We did sell out, so people may come through the doors and arrive late, and that's absolutely fine. We're super informal space here at Persistent and Nasty. I'm Louise, I'm one half of Persistent and Nasty. This is my colleague Elaine, the other half.
I'm doing Instagram Live.
And they just got my big cook.
It's our first ever Instagram.
Oh,
Very, very exciting. I'm just standing out here first to do a little bit of housekeeping so that I'm not on the Instagram Live when I'm doing that. As far as I know, this one does not have a fire drill or fire alarm run, so it does go off, leave the building, and you'll see that the fire exits are here, here, and here. I'd avoid this one because we've got a bit of a cable thing happening here, so I'll go out that way from the fire alarm. We are doing this event today in collaboration with Short Circuit, which we're really, really super excited about. The lovely Abby at the back from Short Circuit is here. Short Circuit, if you don't already know, is Scotland's Film Talent Development Initiative, and it's a fantastic organisation. They have a number of teams and programmes you can access. Their talent executives do one-to-one, so you can get guidance and advice on your career, whether you're mid-career, emerging, and they have the Sharp Shorts funding program for short films and first features. I can speak very highly and enthusiastically about Short Circuit. I was one of their first convergence screenwriter development on that development program that launched in 2021, and it kind of changed the game for me. And my background's in theatre, and I was looking to explore moving into film as a writer. Got on that program, and since then I've now written and produced and created 2 short films. So I'm kind of making my way forward, and that's very much thanks to Short Circuit. So wherever you are in your career, if you haven't already engaged with them, I strongly recommend that you do. Short Circuit Scott and shortcircuit.scot. So yeah, please do that. I'm going to stop talking about that now and come join the table a little bit. Elaine, would you like to say a few words about Persistent and Nasty?
God. Okay, hi. So Persistent and Nasty was formed 6 years ago when Louise and I and 2 other incredible women realised there was a gap for scripts for women who were in their mid to late 30s that didn't talk about men and their relationships towards men. So we decided to put out a call out because we tried to find a play and we couldn't find one. And that was our first incarnation as Persistent and Nasty was a script call out. And we had 4 live events, and then the podcast started, and then we had 2 fringe events, and then the pandemic hit. And we then just really focused on the podcast, and then all of a sudden also became a advocacy forum and support for everyone in our industry. And it's really important for Louise and I that everybody knows that the advocacy work that we do is not just for women, it's for all of us, because everybody can be susceptible to abuses of power within our industry, which we still have to fight continuously, which really pisses me off. Swearing is allowed, by the way, so I'm just going to say that because I will swear.
So for panelists as well, swearing is allowed.
Yes, swearing is allowed if you wish. And we are really excited for this collaboration with Short Circuit and to bring you our first ever live podcast.
Yeah. It's the first time we've done this, guys.
So be kind to us.
Yeah, be gentle. It's also, I think, our first proper live event like this since before the pandemic. We've had our coffee mornings. For those of you who don't know, we do run monthly coffee mornings here at the Tron. They're very.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Thank you also to the Tron, by the way, and the wonderful staff here who have been a wonderful support to us. Our monthly coffee mornings act as a sort of networking, very casual networking and community hub for women and anyone who's feeling marginalised in our industry, theatre and film, to come together and just, you know, share what's going on with them and connect. And that's the live stuff that's been happening. But I think this is our first proper event.
Yes.
Since before the pandemic. So if we're a bit like, what's going on? That's why.
That is why. For those people who are in the space, because everybody who's online, I hope you can hear me, you can obviously make yourself a cup of tea and coffee or a glass of wine if you want. It's after 12, so, you know, go for it. It's Friday. For everyone else in the room, there are teas and coffees and water. Please help yourself throughout the session. And that also, if anybody on our panel needs anything, please let me know and I'll do a wee scoot over and scoot back. Yeah, I think we should just go for it.
I think we should crack on. So I'm using my phone, not to tweet or text people who aren't here, but yes, dear.
Please feel free to share on social media how amazing a time you're having. And remember to tag Persistent and Nasty and Short Circuit. That would be great. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed.
Go for it online as well too. Hopefully you can hear it. Yeah.
I'm just going to get the little bit of info about our fabulous panelists so I can introduce them properly. So today's panel has a focus on women in film, but we'll be talking across lots of different things that affect our industry in terms of identity politics, but also just celebrating our sector and our wins and our achievements as well, because we've got a brilliant panel. So I'm going to start at the far right and introduce Raisah Amhed, who's a screenwriter and director who works across film and television. She's been working with producer Zorana Piggott and Film 4 on a feature project called Half Moon Camp, which looks at the journey of Indian Muslim soldiers in World War I, as well as developing Safar across generational female road trip with Zorana. She's got credits with CBBC, Princess Mirabelle and Molly and Mac, BBC Three's The Break, BBC The Socials, phone drama Control. It goes on and on and on. She has also been part of the writers' room for season 1 and 2 of the Channel 4 series We Are Lady Parts, which is amazing. She's currently developing the adaptation of Martin Sixsmith's Aisha's Gift for television with Freedom Scripted. As well as writing and director, Raisah also sits on the BAFTA Scotland Committee, the board of the Scottish Youth Film Foundation and Beasley Productions, and chairs the Glasgow Film Festival Industry Advisory Group. Big round of applause, Raisah! Next along, we have the wonderful Nikki Parrott, who is in charge of Tiger Lily Productions, who has been running for 25 years now, did you say?
Yeah,
25 years.
The one in London, not the one here, but yeah.
Amazing. And it's a multi-award-winning independent production company with a reputation for tackling powerful subject matter with sensitivity and artistry. In 2018, Tiger Lily 2 in Scotland was formed with the purpose of exploring new talent and stories outside London and to be a prominent co-producer for international projects and teams. It's run out of Glasgow and headed by Nikki as managing director. Absolutely. In their first 3 years, they co-produced 2 feature documentaries, Polystyrene, I Am a Cliché, which won 2 BIFAs, including Best Documentary. Is There Anybody Out There, which premiered at Sundance, and produced Hong Kong Mixtape, which premiered at Glasgow Film Festival this year, and Hot Docs Toronto. And last but by no means least, Elaine's going to be a key hype woman to make that going. And to my immediate right is the wonderful Sarah Grant. Sarah Grant is a writer, director, performer.
She has a number of BAFTA qualifying shorts under her belt and has created short form work for BBC The Social, BBC Short Stuff. She's moving towards writing and directing long form for film and television, shadowing Jack Clough as part of the BBC Comedy Bursary and other programmes such as Young Films Residency, BAFTA Flair, the EIFF Talent Lab, and UK TV Comedy 50/50 Pilot Initiative. She has also worked in development with BBC Studios, Candle and Bell, and Northbridge Media. Sarah is committed to creating body positive, sex positive, and inclusive female-led stories that are honest, feminist, and fearless. Yeah, so what a panel. Thank you so much for being here, guys. We're delighted to chat to you.
Over the moon. I mean, usually that is my first wee shtick that I do on the podcast. Well, that we do is like, give us a little potted history. And that was indeed a potted history. So to start us off, I would love to ask all three of you, what is your favourite film of 2023?
This is an impossible question.
Not for
Great
me,
answer.
Not for me, Polite Society. Hands down, Polite Society by Nikki and Mansour. Film about sisterhood. I don't even know how to describe it. A comedy, drama, kung fu, Bollywood film. It's honestly absolutely incredible. The best film about sisterhood I've seen in a long time. I adore it. I've watched, saw it at Glasgow last year, and recently rewatched it with my partner, and like was crying laughing as much as that. So like that's definitely my favourite film from last year.
It's a good one.
And in development since before We Are Lady Farms.
Yeah, I heard that.
Forever to get it made.
It's really annoying that it's a case of like, oh, I've got this really, really amazing idea, and they're like, nah. But then if something goes right, they're like, oh, what about this amazing idea? You're like, yeah, like I've been trying to tell you that for 10 years. So annoying. Industry.
There's too many. There's too many.
many.
It's quite hard to pick one. You know, documentaries. Some of the ones I've made myself, which I quite like.
Yes.
And I think Is Anybody Out There was one of the joyous films because it was the first time that someone who looked like Ella was actually on the screen, and I think that was really important actually in terms of what we're talking about today as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when someone asks that question, it's like, what mood am I in right now?
Yeah.
What do I remember? It's one of those, all the films that we mentioned so far, I really enjoyed all of them. I guess it's the more recent ones that are sticking in my mind, Past Lives,
Yes.
which I think everyone was just heartbroken by. American Fiction, which is, again, a very recent one, but I think for me that speaks to, if you are from a marginalised community, you feel every part of that film. Tish, Paul's film, I really enjoyed that. It left me feeling very angry at the end. Tons of films. I'll probably finish this podcast and go, I know which one it is.
You can send me a little audio clip
I'll
later.
send you a little
I'll
bit.
slide it on in. It will be fine.
Do you want to say what your favourite film was?
Well, actually, mine was Past Lives.
Past Lives.
I loved it. I loved the cinematography. I loved all of it. Lou?
It was actually Past Lives. We were literally just talking about that. Like, what film are you going to say? And I was like, I've just watched, because I just saw it recently, and I was like, it just like soared into the leads for 2023. For me, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Look at us matching.
Look at that. Isn't that cute?
Okay, so I'm going to start asking with the questions. What challenges, unique challenges in particular, have you encountered in your careers, or even over the last year, for example, or since the pandemic, and how have you overcome them? Anybody can go first.
I think, we've been over 25 years next year, as Elaine said, so I think things have changed quite drastically. I think it's more, I think I remember doing a panel with someone who was a commissioner, whose name I won't mention, who I was talking about giving mentorship for people not from, from working class backgrounds, women who kind of took quite a long time to be recognised. And there was a lot of, people who came from Oxford, and you had to deal with that at Oxford University. And I said something about commissioners not answering emails. And he was like, that's because this person's always persistent, pursuing me. And I was like, and he was quite rude about it. And he carried on like, as if I didn't have the right to ask him for when you email someone, or I don't know. So that was quite derogatory. And it was also in a room where we were trying to talk about people, with a room full of young people actually. So it wasn't really the best positive thing to say in front of all these young women. And then one other thing is just when we first started the industry, we were called the girls because I run a company with another woman, and they were like, when we walked into somewhere like Cannes or something, most of the older white men would be, oh, the girls are here. I'm like, really? One person still does it, and I'm like, man, I'm 50. Like, actually, now it's quite appreciative. But yeah, back in the day.
Yeah.
I think if we're talking the last couple of years, the industry itself, I think we all probably recognize there's been a lot of challenges globally with the industry, whether we're talking about the strikes in America or just this sustainability of a career within the industry when you can't control the stuff that happens around you. So I can go off and write, but if people are in chaos within their own spaces, that writing might take forever to go somewhere. There might not be directing work coming up because we might have strikes, we might have a million other things. So I think one of the big challenges for a lot of people is sustaining a career and being able to kind of go, when there's a lull, being able to kind of persevere through that, I think is a challenge. And I think also we are all still dealing with collective trauma from the pandemic and all the stuff around, George Floyd and a bunch of other things, and the very recent stuff that's been happening in the Middle East and the trauma that comes with that. So I think we're living in quite traumatic times, and I think our industry is built in a way where we're expected to just carry on and get things done, and sometimes we forget that we're human. And actually one of the big challenges is sometimes just being able to shut off the world and get on with things, because either you're really impacted by what's going on, or you're not sure if the thing's going to go somewhere because you don't know if the industry is ready to commission or whatever else.
Yeah, I'm following up on that, like kind of personally is like you say about the industry not being ready to answer anything. I find that I'm very personally frustrated about people saying, let's take time, let's find the right time for this, let's take as long as it takes to get things right. And I'm like, you are a salaried employee talking to me, a freelancer. And there is just no acknowledgement for that. And again, feeding into the fact that we are living in really traumatizing times. As someone who works mostly in comedy, I keep getting advised, no comedy drama, we want pure escapism. We want pure escapism, we want joy, we want everything. And I'm like, okay, that's fine for the writing, but you're expecting me to be that person for you outside of the writing? I can write you joyful comedy, but I need you to take me seriously when I say that because you've put back my deadline that you set in my contract by 3 months, I'm very much struggling because of that. And they're like, no, comedy, no, you're the funny one. And it's like, we are human, we live in the world. And it's really frustrating that these comments often come from people who are earning full-time salaries, and there's just no acknowledgement that we have to pay our bills. And because it is such a competitive field, when you push back on that, what they hear is, well, you clearly don't want this as much as anyone else. It's very much that's tying into the trouble with being someone who's working class. I'm personally struggling a little bit with my voice. In the past year, I've been very much as in how I actually speak. I didn't realize how much until I'm adapting something right now that is a coming of age film set in Paisley in the noughties, which is my actual experience. And yet I'm like, my voice is too soft for this. My voice is too soft for this. But I'm working with other people that have told me after getting to know me, see, when I first met you, you really scared me because you sound so violent. And this is my rounded voice. This isn't actually, and I'm kind of just aware that how I talk now isn't how I talked growing up. And having to be able to tap into that for work, but at the same time have things rounded out for everyone else's comfort. Yeah, that's my struggles.
I think my family were from Hackney, and they're all Cockneys, and they don't talk like this at all. and I have had to, in order to get on, change my accent. And I know I have done it, but there was no other choice in some ways. You know what I mean? It wasn't so, 20 years ago, it wasn't so hip to be from Hackney or Cockney, or any regional. I mean, I presume also from Glasgow as well, you know.
Yeah.
We're living in a kind of Radio 4, BBC 4 world. And now accents are embraced, but it's still taking a long time.
But they can be surprised by you. When I'm outside of Scotland, people can't believe I'm Scottish. They're sometimes baffled that people of colour exist in Scotland. And that speaks to what the representation of Scotland is on screen, pretty much. And I've had instances where I've said something and said, say that again, and I think, they've maybe not understood what I've said. No, it's not that. They just want to make sure they heard a Scottish accent coming out of me. And that's still like, I don't know what to do with that, to be honest. I can either laugh and go, this is ridiculous, or I can actually cry about it a little bit, because it's the state of what we are producing in Scotland and what we're putting out onto our screens. Because the outside world only gets a sense of who we are as a country through what they're watching. And I could go on and on about it.
Which is more than allowed if you want. Yes.
There's also something kind of troubling to me about people in rooms and offices and boardrooms who are maybe the self-declared arbiters of what needs to get made, making assumptions about your identity and about where you're from and what stories you either should be telling or want to be telling. That sounds like a very frustrating, room to be in, having that conversation.
But it's comfortable for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's often you'll find that the gatekeepers, the people right at the top, if you ask them what their friend circle looks like, it's people exactly like them. They probably don't have massively diverse friend circles. And so because of that, their perception of communities, groups, whatever label you want to put on it, comes from what they are consuming. And so when they meet someone who is from a group like that, and maybe they've only seen a terrible stereotype, they're trying to figure out what version of this group are you and how can we use you. It's so funny because a lot of the time I get approached for Muslim stories, obviously, and it's really interesting because sometimes they're very kind of specific, and I kind of go, that's not my experience. I'm not someone who's, for example, Black and Muslim. That's a very different experience, and I can give you a list of writers you should speak to. I'm not gay and Muslim. You should speak to gay and Muslim writers. But they seem to think, you tick one box, you'll be able to get the voice right, and you'll be able to do it. And when you can't do it, it's almost like sometimes they're a bit frustrated at you. But you just want to go, well, yeah, you can't tell me every, old straight white man story, can you? So why should I tell you, every Muslim story, just because that's one facet of my existence.
Yeah, I think that perception of, a working class person, when you're told by someone who's obviously not working class commissioner that this is how they want more working class stories, and that's not a working class story, and it's really authentic to you, then you're like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I've just been told that, quite a few times, and you're like, really? Have you ever been in the working, you're part of a different world, basically. And it's just frustrating, but I mean, I think being positive, things are changing.
I think a huge thing that's kind of like been kind of ripping my knitting recently is that I feel
that's ripping my knitting.
Yes.
Any of our RP listeners.
No, in this room. But is the idea, and again, this is a very cynical outlook, and I didn't used to be a very cynical person, But I feel that there's also for these commissioners is that there's something very beneficial about having these stories and these writers and these groups of people in their development process, even when there is no intention to take it through to commission. And I have like an example. A lot of people in the room know myself and my writing partner Katrina, and we've been working on the pipeline for Stunners for a while. We started doing sketches for BBC, and we kind of took it to a 15-minute, and we got the commission for the 30-minute pilot script, and that's way more than we ever thought we'd get by making sketches. So we're super grateful for the development opportunity, which was great. But this process of this script got stretched out way longer than we had budgeted for. Like, we were meant to be finished the script by April. We weren't allowed to start writing it by late July. It messed up a big load of things in the year. And eventually in December, we got this project's going no further. And we were really upset about that because we were hopeful. We were like, but at the same time, we were like, at every stage we get a yes. It's more than we thought we would. We'll be thankful for it. And we're further on in our career as we want to be. But what we found out is that a huge thing that was against us is that Such Brave Girls was coming out, and it's very much the same comedy. But Such Brave Girls was getting ready to be released. So they knew about that piece. It was the same commissioner, had the same thing on the slate for months and months and months and months and months, and that was always going to end up being the decision. So there's an element of like, if you knew this for a long time, then why were you developing us? And again, I don't want to be cynical, but someone who we know who's kind of outside the industry, but is a little bit of like a saber rattler at some point, like sent a very audacious email to the commissioners being like, what are you doing for women in Scotland? Like, what are you doing for, like, very much like, I had no idea what she was doing. But at the same time, like, still did it. And we found out that they were like, oh, you clearly aren't paying attention because we have Sarah and Katrina that we're very invested in. So our names are being used to answer these criticisms with no intention of actually following through. Obviously, I'm not inside the room and I'm not like, saying as a criticism, but on the outside, when we're hearing all of this in context while trying to take our careers forward, there's no way to not have that information and then raise the question, did you ever intend to commission us? And that's...
I think it's a very different thing, Such Brave Girls and Stunners. They're so different from each other.
But gross girl comedy is all gross girl comedy.
This is the problem, isn't it? There's the safety thing going, we've got this version of the thing, and even though you're giving us something drastically different and Scottish, right? That's the other big thing. We're still going to compare it to the other thing. I've had very similar conversations around certain types of shows, and there's always been a thing of, oh yeah, but this already exists. And I go, yeah, but that's set in England and it's a totally different community. Yes, the women might be brown, but this is a different type of brown, I'm telling you. And she's Scottish, and it's a whole different experience. But there's almost like a safety for them and kind of going, no, but this thing exists. We can't imagine that we could have two of this type of thing, even though they'll be completely different experiences. And I think this is a problem with a lot of the commissioning being based in London as well, that they forget that often the Scottish experience of whatever group you might be speaking about is so vastly different, just because of the temperament up here, than what you would get coming out of England, or what you would get coming out of Wales or whatever else. And it really underserves us in that way, where you've got something ready to go that you've done so many things with that place, who should be the ones taking the risks. I could rant about these. But
call them out.
I've never commissioned us. That's fine.
No, but my thinking with the BBC specifically is we pay for them, right? In the same way, the BFI are the ones that fund things like Short Circuit and other, emerging talent, new talent programs. The BBC should be the place where new talent is going in. Now, if you go and you get commissioned by the BFI for a short film, and that short film doesn't go anywhere, the BFI don't write you off, because it's part of a process. It's part of a process of you developing as a writer, a director, a producer, an actor, whatever else it might be. You're not written off for one failure, because that's just one part of your journey. The danger, I think, with television often is they expect you to come in with so much behind you already, and already being a success that someone else has tried has tried out, that if you're someone that's coming in and going, no, I've got a brilliant concept and I've had smaller successes and I can prove this, it's still often doesn't feel like it's enough. And I'm constantly saying, well, the BBC are the place where they should be commissioning stuff and not thinking about, is this going to be a complete total success? They should be thinking, what is the long-term relationship that we want to have with this creative? How can we support them in making this? Because even if this thing isn't quite what we need it to be, the next thing might be the next succession or whatever else. But until you give people the chance to sometimes fail, sometimes do things not quite perfectly, they're not going to figure out that really amazing thing that's going to be a global phenomenon. And the BBC should be the place that that's happening, but it's not. And when I met with Film 4, when we started the process with them, I didn't have an agent. I had an amazing producer. I had an idea that had been developed through a program which was, I think, funded by the BFI. So I created a treatment, didn't have a script for the film. We went in, we had a meeting with them, and they loved the idea. Now, I was untested at that time in terms of making features and things like that. And it was Sam Lavender, who now works in TV, is an amazing man, really believes in talent. And the conversation we were having with them was not, oh, we love this idea and we think it could be something. They were saying things to me like, we know you want to direct as well, so when you're ready to like make your first feature, and if you need to make a short, that's something we could look at. And they were talking about long-term relationships with me. And I'm thinking, well, if Film 4 can do that, why isn't our public broadcaster doing that with talent? And they have things like The Social and things like that, where they're bringing in talent on a smaller scale. That's my rant.
That's a very good one.
It was an excellent run.
Yeah. I think that kind of makes me think of something of, as a community, but also in the much wider sense of socially, what can we do to really push the BBC to start to make those changes? Because at the end of the day, as you say, they are funded by us. And that is whether that's through the tax that they get from the government or our licence fee. And I think there's something that it's maybe about kind of joint action on calling them out, literally, like I just made the joke about, but actually calling them out on it and saying, well, where is it? Because you've got a news programme that you've just cancelled that had like 9 folk watching it.
Yeah.
And has had 9 folk watching it for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
But the amount of money put into that,
That's, yeah.
they could have commissioned a 6-part, half-hour comedy series, you know, lower
Exactly.
budget, but they could have done that. And the amount of people you would have developed through that process, and stuff like that, you could sell globally then as well. So it has a bigger life.
It's also that schedule where I when I first moved up here 25 years ago, I was really shocked that there was the news was bang in the middle of 9 to 10, and I was like, well, so where, if you were having like a feature doc, for example, where would you put that? Because you'd have to have it after 10, and then that means it doesn't finish till 11:30, which means you've got to get up for work the next day or college, and young people might not want to stay up, and you might not want to stay up as well. And so I was like, but where's the scheduling in that? Where is the new opportunity? Which I have been banging on about as well, you know, in terms of feature docs, is why can't BBC Scotland work with Screen Scotland and have a kind of slot where feature docs go, and they can be both part funded, and it means that you, as feature docs, which we, you know, a lot of people make now, have a platform, which then also then that can facilitate other co-producers. So you've already got someone backing you, because some of the questions are always, why isn't your national channel backing you? Why is your, and it's frustrating, because, which is partly why I became involved with the industry thing, because things have to change up here. And I think there are so many brilliant people and brilliant women directors who need support and a voice. And I suppose I found it at the beginning hard, because I'm from London. Why should I be the one telling people we should be doing this, we should be doing this? But then I thought, fuck it, you know, I live in Scotland now. I love Scotland.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
My kids are here. I am going to try and change this, because it's so important that we have a platform that people want to watch. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
Let's just be a bit more brave, and just, you know, sadly, same old people are commissioned. So that's, you know, another thing. How we change that?
That's a really, that's a real massive annoyance. I start every sentence with like, you know what's annoying? But it's the fact that because we aren't really brave up here, it's that it's really difficult to get taken seriously down south. I've been having conversations with people down south and commissioners down south as well, and
You need commissioners up here to take you seriously.
Well, this is what I've been saying.
Why are we going down south? No, there is a brilliant talent pool up here. Why? And I'm talking from experience of like, I would have gone mad 15 years ago up here because everything's down there and it's still down. Okay, it's still down there a bit, but a lot. And I think a lot. I mean, I'm just finding it like, I'm looking and thinking, my God, why are all the decisions being made down there when it's actually, where is the thing up here?
Well, then this is where you have to make the decision, because again, this is where I'm at. Like, I want to be making work here. That's all I want to do. I want them to be risks to be made. I want things to be made here. However, do I wait and just start throwing rocks at walls for the next 10 years of my career until people actually start doing it, or do I actually have to try and make moves?
I think that's like, it's calling it out, isn't it? It's starting to call it out, going, hold on, this is not good enough. You are not supporting.
We're calling it out. Well, we're calling it out. There's an obsession with IP in this industry, as we will all know. Is it a book adaptation? Is it a game adaptation? Is it a famous person's life adaptation? And I am working on an adaptation, and it's really fun. Like, I have to come up with the stuff itself, but I also have lots of original stuff in the works. But I know that if I'm being strategic, that adaptation will probably get made before the original stuff gets made. And the thing is, like, I actually know people who wrote something as a script, then went off and wrote it as a book. Then the book became successful, and now the book's being adapted into a script. And you're just kind of like, what is this game that we're playing?
No, I have had that conversation. I've said that to my partner a couple of times, being like, what if I wrote this as a book? And then they're like, why? Why would you do that?
That's like, stuff made.
I thought it was so annoying. That's better go.
You're saying, and there's a recent announcement around new stuff that's been commissioned. But if a lot of your new stuff that's been commissioned are book adaptations, how is that a risk?
Yeah.
It comes in with a built-in audience.
Because you've got your audience already.
You've probably hired writers that are very experienced. And we can speak to even certain South Asian stories that have come out in the last little while where no South Asian writers were involved. And I know South Asian writers that were then having conversations with those commissioners and were told, oh, no, we already have our South Asian story. But the South Asian story is written by a white man. But that means we don't have space to commission you, the South Asian person, with your South Asian story. And so sorry guys, this is very depressing. But these are the things that, one, sometimes people are afraid to call it out because they're thinking, am I going to be seen as a troublemaker, and am I going to be the person that they don't want to then work with? And sometimes you're like, do people think I just moan all the time? Is that what it comes across as? But actually, no, it's not that. It's kind of going, if there's an underrepresentation, then we need to be more active in going, if it's a working class story, why do we not have working class writers telling working class stories? People have so much lived experience. Why are we not using that lived experience and giving those opportunities and pushing the new writers up?
So funny you said moaning as well, because it's one of the things that we've talked about reclaiming words quite a lot. And that phrase that does tend to get used quite a lot to women, you're moaning. Well, why are you moaning and you're not being assertive?
Well, you're being aggressive.
Or you're being aggressive. Yeah, why is aggression a bad thing when it's on us?
Yeah. Well,
Why, like that kind of, so I guess there's a question of, has there been a moment where you've been assertive, aggressive, and it's worked for you in your career? That moment of just call it.
Not yet, but I think I'm getting there. I don't know why. Like I don't know when I started doing this, but I started assigning words to years. I don't have enough patience to do like mood boards and stuff. So I just assign a word for the year. So like I think 2020 was going to be the year of progress. It's things like, at one point I was like, There was one that was a year of risk, just things like that. I was like, and this year's word is feral. Okay. So this is the year of feral, where I have decided to ask myself with every communication is, are you being feral? And it has led to some interesting plans and conversations so far. And so I don't think I'm there yet, but if there is a year, it's going to be this one.
Yes, I love that. I feel a merch opportunity coming.
Well, I don't have a
Year of
production.
Fennel.
I don't have a production company, but I think if I ever started one, Fennel Films sounds fun.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
plans.
Nikki or Raisah?
I think I've been in meetings with commissioners who have basically given us a list of 4, normally white men to make a film with, and we have said, no, we've got this list of 4 women who we want to work with. And it is quite hard to do that because you are then judged as the women's producers. But actually, now we make an assertive effort mainly to work with women, or, just that's what we do. My friend is in the audience, I'm working with as well, the only man.
You're so welcome.
But I think you just have to, I've done things like, chase people down at markets because they're commissioners and they're moaning about the fact that they're there. I'm like, and that people are asking them questions and saying, have you read this? But that's their job, isn't it? They get paid to go to that market, I mean, I think you just have to now say, I don't want to work with that person. I want to work with this person. I want to bring this person on because I think they have a better perspective. And I think that's the actual thing, is that you have to find someone as a woman director, a woman writer, who's going to champion you, because that's what we do. And I think that's been really important to Tidely through the whole process of, becoming braver and saying, no, this is who we want to work with.
I think on the subject of ways of working, Nikki, someone who's heads up a production company, because we touched on this at the top, I'm so interested in changing modes of working in terms of centering care, because we touched on trying to write in a moment of trauma, or having to respond to things because, you're the person that can speak to this, but actually maybe you're not in the mood to speak to that just because it happens to be a facet of your identity. And I was just wondering, what are your thoughts around the ways the industry could actually start focusing a little bit more on well-being and care-centered approaches? I don't know if
I think it's really important to there's a thing called Raisah Films which opened does. I think it's really, when we work with people, if you want to take your kid to school, if you want to go to your kid's sports day, if you want to work around another way of working, which isn't 9 to 5, then do it, because as long as the work gets done, and most of the women we work with do actually fund, they do make time, and they make it work. They're not just slacking, as some people would, of another, yes, some people would say that. The other side, not the women's side. No, so I think it's really important. And also we do have, if we're dealing with someone who we're making a subject, recently we made Blue Bag Life about, Lisa, about her mum and heroin. And actually we do have counsellors who can talk to her. We offer that service. We've just been making a film with Pauline Black, and we were filming, and she came up. She told us about this very horrible thing that happened to her when she was a kid. And I said, do you want someone to talk to afterwards? Because that's really important, that you look after people. The other thing is, it's really important that I keep banging on about having a shorter day, so that you can actually you can drop your kids to school, or your care and responsibilities, whatever they are, and then you can leave at 6, or to get home before it's not 9 o'clock, because those long days are really putting people off, especially women directors who potentially have the caring responsibilities. You know, you've got to no weekends, for example. You know, have a longer,
Children's does no weekends. Children's
yeah.
usually.
You know, just but that's again, it's getting better, but that battle is. It's really. I remember, like, actually, when I was doing a film in London with Dave Farr, and my son was then 4, and he had just started school, literally the first, when they go in every, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't not be there. So actually, I had a really good line producer who covered for me, and also I chose a location which was literally 10 minutes from his 10 minutes from his school, so I could literally run, get to set early. Go back home, get him, take him to school, then pick him up and then drop him off at the childminders. But I made that work. Now I'm the producer, so I can maybe do that a bit more easily. But it's just trying to be more open to everyone who works in our sets. Yeah. That positivity of like anyone who wants to do that.
On like a much smaller scale, if anyone's I don't know who's in the room makes self-funded work, but there's so little funding going around. A lot of the stuff we make is off our own back, crowdfunded. Having someone on your crew that's a well-being officer that's genuinely been your one job is to look after people, it makes a huge difference on set. I self-funded a film that shot in April last year, and I had someone come on who works in theatre and was just interested in getting to know film a little bit more, and I was like, do you want to come and experience a set but also just look after people? And then within the first day, we had this culture on set where if someone, doesn't matter who it was, if you saw someone's water bottle half empty, then you filled it up for them and put it back at them. I'm terrible for walking away and leaving stuff, so people were following me around with my water bottle. The well-being officer was just going up to people being like, do you need a wee? And they're like, actually I do. And it's just because again, you just you go into this work mode and you just totally focus, and it's just been like, hey, so it's just paying attention. So camera are going to be like, oh, we're going to be another 15 minutes. It's like, okay, everyone out in the garden and have a stretch. And everyone just felt so much better. Just having someone whose one pure job is to make everyone as happy as possible. Check in. And she had colouring. It was awesome. People went down and had a little colour in their downtime and things, and had fidget toys for the neurodivergent. And just someone who thought about that, it made such a difference. And we had a really, really intense shoot. We didn't have much time in the location, so it was a very intense 3-day shoot with a lot of really serious subject matter. But everyone in my crew afterwards said, I've never come away of a shoot like that in terms of hours and intensity and not felt burnt out. I don't feel burnt out. And I'm like, oh, that's the difference.
Can vouch for that, actually, as being someone who was privileged enough to be on that set. Sarah's level of care and thought in the lead up to and the information and just everything seemed to centre from you. The care and the well-being of everybody you were working with was the focal point, and then the film came off of that, and you did a phenomenal job. And you self-funded it. You weren't funded. So that I think the idea, for me, I'm fascinated by ideas of care and well-being, because it is people on the ground, the grassroots level. The people that are doing it best are not the funded institutions, I have to say.
And also just being super open about it as well. Like I've a couple of times a year I'll put online that this is something that I have this well-being document that I created that I'm happy to send to anyone. So if you hear of people who are doing that, ask for their documents and be like, oh, do you have a process for this? And share it wide. And because it might be useful for someone else's work. So if anyone, I'm the same with applications for things. If anyone needs applications or anything and wants to see it, anything that I've got that I've saved, anyone is welcome to. I don't like this idea of just pulling the ladder up behind you or keeping things separate as if we're competition. We're not competition, we're colleagues. And we're in the trenches together, and we got to look after each other, because again, we're going through loads of different things, but at the same time, a lot of our struggles are the same. And I think that things will be different if we just make an active effort to just make sure we're taking care of each other, on and off set. So share your shit.
Share your shit.
Share your shit.
And I think you can choose who you work with. Remember. Just because somebody offers you an opportunity, and if you get bad vibes, you don't need to say yes. I think this is the thing. When I, quite early in my career, I thought I had to say yes to everything. And realizing you could say no was a revelation. And actually, there's a lot of power in knowing that you can say no. And I work with people I feel comfortable with now. So even at a development process, if I've got a script due in, if I've got a redraft due in of something, I'm usually the one that go, okay, I'll get it to you within this very short amount of time. And they'll be like, no, take your time with it. There's no rush. But I need a deadline, so I need that. But they'll often kind of check in. If I am taking a bit longer, they'll just check in and go, hey, we're just to remind you we're here. If you want to talk anything through, if you need a bit more time, just shout. And these are production companies. And so that's the thing, it's good people exist within this industry, and people who care about the people they work with exist. You just have to make sure you're working with people that you feel comfortable with, and that you can have, if you are in a bad place, if you suddenly have a really bad spell of mental health, that you feel comfortable saying, look, I need a bit of time, and you don't feel that sort of like fear of having that conversation. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is knowing you have a choice. You can decide who you work with. You can say no to people. Just because a company's huge doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the best experience with them.
That's brilliant advice, I think, actually. I heard somebody say something similar. The most powerful thing you have available to you is the ability to say no. And it's so true, I think.
And we're an industry that is based on saying yes, whatever part of the industry you are in. So it is that reminder that that's your power is really great. We only have, so we've got about 7 minutes left for us having questions for you, and then we're going to open it up to the people who are here with us at the Tron, and anyone who's online. I have no idea if anybody's online. I don't know.
There are people. There's little waves. I'm like your old dad here. Like somebody's waving. Like I said, somebody waved.
We've talked about loads of kind of things that need improved. I'm going to use that word. So on that, I would love to hear if there's anything that you feel that's changed, even if it's just been in the last year, 5 years, that has made a positive impact.
Less competition between people. I kind of feel like there's an old guard, and they were maybe very much brought up in an environment of competition, and it was almost like there's only one opportunity and there's 5 of us, so I'm not going to let you in on how I'm doing this. Whereas now I feel like we definitely are in a space where we celebrate each other's wins, we share applications, we give feedback, we help each other out. I feel like, and I can only really speak for Scotland because this is where I work and this is where I am, but I certainly feel that in Scotland we have this really lovely, nurturing industry where it doesn't feel like we are trying to claim the only space. People will go, oh, thanks for offering me this opportunity, but I know someone better. I know someone that would be more suited to you. I had someone that was speaking to me about directing something a few weeks ago, and I said to him, look, absolutely we can talk about this, but you guys should direct it. I'm speaking to you, you know exactly what you're doing. I don't know why you're trying to get someone else. I'll help you if you want. If you want to direct it and you need a little bit of support, I'll come in and I'll help you do that. But don't give away your vision if your vision is there and you just need a little bit of pushing to get that confidence. I think they didn't end up directing it in the end, and they got someone else. But it was that thing of at least having those conversations and going, if this is something you're even thinking about a little bit, and you just need someone to be the one to give you the permission to do it. I feel like we give each other a lot more permission now, and we support each other, and that's really lovely.
Yeah, I think collaboration up here is very different from down south. I'm working with more production companies, and it's about getting the project made rather than who's the ego and who's running it, and that's a whole different concept to where you come from in London, where everyone's trying to keep their things together, and that they wouldn't share their applications and things like that. I think people are now thinking, and mainly women actually, we're in it together, so it's hard enough being on your own. You may, if you can help each other, that means more people are going to have the job of directing or writing or something like that. I mean, I think things have. I think women directors and writers are being taken more seriously now than way back when we started, definitely. And we don't have as many arguments about this is the women directors who are working with this story I want to tell. People are commissioning more, and I'm hopefully it's not just a tick box thing, because obviously that's really important. Talk about the regions, talk about women in the regions. I'm hoping that this is something that actually people are really seriously taking, the commission's taking seriously and thinking, no, we have got to have a more diverse storytelling, because you just have to. Otherwise, we are 50% of the world. Come on, guys, you've got to give us what we want to watch as well. And not just the boxes, I hate those boxes when you pitch a story and they go, oh, we've already got that story, we've already got that women's story, we've already done that women's documentary. Like, yeah, but you've also done Pride and Prejudice about 1,000 times. Oh my God, is Jane Austen the only writer in this country? Yeah. Written by a white man.
Yeah.
She was the what century, terrible. 18th century, is it? 17, I can't, not a historian. But I do not want to see another Pride and Prejudice. I do not, because there's so many great modern writers out there.
But do you not think it's because sometimes some of the people in the highest positions have not worked their way up?
Like Jane Austen, they just like it.
But like the gatekeepers, they've not
filled
necessarily
up. Filled up.
Yeah, they've filled up. They've not been in the trenches. They've not necessarily had creative positions in the past, and sometimes they lack imagination.
Yeah, I think yes, absolutely, and I actually agree. Someone's given the job, and I think also, not to keep slagging off men, but I'm just gonna say, is that sometimes you find yourself, or I have done, young director boy, floppy hair from Cambridge or Oxford. And I do like Cambridge or Oxford. I'm divorced now, but I did marry someone from Oxford after university a long time ago. Is that they are teaching him things that like cutaways and things that they should really know if they're going to be a director. And so you're, as a woman producer, you're just like, well, how did he get that gig? Because he knows nothing. He knows nothing. I'm so shocked, and I'm giving him visualizations like, why don't you do like this? Why don't you do like this? Like, why am I doing that? Where is a woman director who would know that, or where's her story? And I think I find, it has got better. But I mean, surely someone who talks a gab, and we've all been there. We've all watched people do things like, again, boys who have got the gift of the gab, but who have the confidence because they have been taught that men are better and men can do anything, and they have been given the opportunities, and so they just take them. Whereas we have not. It takes a long time to be this confident and say, no, this is. I don't want you to do this. But they have been. It's just a retraining of re-educating people's minds, and sadly, until some of those people who make decisions die off. Then how are we going to change things? Really? Yeah.
But I think that's where the community that we see.
I'm not going to kill anyone. I'm not saying I'm not a Trump. I'm not saying go and storm the BBC Scotland Yard and get rid of all those people. But I don't know. Things may change.
This is where I think the community here, it is. I think for the most part, it is a lot of really phenomenal women who are pushing each other forward. And that thing of like, we're not taught that we can do anything necessarily. We're not taught that we don't need 500 qualifications in order to do the most basic thing. We think we need to know everything inside out before we can even think about doing it. And I think that's changing because we're all kind of going to each other, well, this is a part I learned and this is a part you learn, and let's all kind of like pull it all together and figure out a way to do it without having to jump through so many hoops. And I think that's the difference in Scotland now, is that we have these communities like this.
Yeah.
Like something, the existence of this, your coffee mornings, that's important because sometimes it's just a conversation is all that people need.
Yeah.
Thank you for that soundbite for potential funders. Raisah. Really appreciate it. That was awesome.
But I do also think it's really important, like, men are in the space.
Yes.
And that they hear it and they are willing to hear it. So for all of those who are online in the room, it's great that you are, because you can take that further right now than we can, because we will keep hitting the ceiling, the wall, whatever, whereas you can open that door a little bit quicker than we can. So it'd be great if you would all kind of start doing that a little bit.
Those doors wide open.
Just leave them open. It'd be lovely. We are going to open it up for questions. If anyone, fabulous,
Straight up.
fabulous.
I've got two.
Fantastic.
Sarah mentioned the well-being coordinator you want to say who that is.
Oh, yeah,
Money to go.
Bex Sherwood is one of the core founders of the Loud Poets, which is an organisation in Edinburgh that promotes and celebrates spoken word poetry, which is like, it's ridiculous. It's one of the cheapest art forms going, but it is so unappreciated. And I think in terms of theatre, it's kind of, I mean, there is changes with like Imogen Sterling's Love the Sinner is starting to get a little bit more of a mainstream audience, but I think spoken word is kind of that. This is me just geeking out about the Loud Poets. Anyway, Bex is one of the directors, but is an incredible person who just is very organised, very on it, but also someone who just is, they've said this themselves, they get to, like, you know, after 5 years of working in a job or working something, they are wanting to do a new challenge, and I think their new challenge is film. They loved being on set. They are someone who is just always looking after people. So yeah, Bex Sherwood is definitely someone to give a shout to. And I think their handles are Bex Poet, because a lot of their stuff is still with spoken word things, but they're definitely someone to give a shout to.
So just for the podcast, because obviously we're in quite a big room, that question was, who was the wellbeing officer?
Yes.
Just also on that note, Beck too do also run mental health first aid training. So if anyone's interested in being more aware of these things and just giving yourself a bit of upskilling, and that's free. The Beck to stuff, those training courses are
That was free. Fuck, I paid for mine.
I'm pretty sure all the Beck to training is free.
I didn't go through Beck 2. I didn't know it was a free one. I went through Sandwich.
So I think that's worth anyone doing. Like, if you're working with groups of people, in the same way that you might go and do your first aid training, mental health first aid training is a thing. I'm Beck to run it, I think, a couple of times a year.
I think Spring Skills do it as well, don't they?
Do they? I'm not sure.
I think Spring Skills might start to do things. There's definitely someone who.
Yeah.
We can have a wee check, and then if that's the case, we'll link all of that in the show notes.
I think as someone, again, it's great having someone who's like your wellbeing facilitator who can actually do this as well, but also as a director. It was very important for me to do that, because I'm like, I want people to know that I will stop a set, I will stop a shoot if I don't need someone to kind of come and whisper, being like, someone's just having a thing, but it's okay, I'm dealing with it, don't you worry about it. I'm like, fuck the film.
She's gone feral.
Yeah. Well, I've started doing this, and I feel like it's much better. Like, anytime I am leading up a project, my kind of, like, you know, in safety announcements, the first thing I'll say is, guys, fuck the film. Like, we're all here to make this, and that's great, but never at any point ever question that it's more important than you. So, and I think that is just like, because we have to work so hard and we have to throw all of ourselves at it, you kind of forget being like, I feel shit, but I can't leave because then this film will, fuck it, who fucking cares? Like,
I think that's changed now. I think like years ago that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
People doesn't, you know, people be crying on the floor, and someone would walk over them probably. You know,
that actually happened
because they've got time, and time is money.
I was on I think I will not name names because this is so bad. But I was shadowing on a production, and the writer performer is a young woman who has never had this before. Like, she's a comedian and has never worked in film before, so had this, or worked on screen, so has a massive thing to go, like, pretty much from TikTok to her first full series. It's a huge jump, incredible for her. And 3 weeks into it, she's obviously exhausted, not being prepared for what it is. We were in a house and she went outside, took herself outside, sat on the ground and cried as everyone worked around her. And I'm shadowing, so I kind of I'm being like, is there anything anyone can do? The only person who asked if she was okay was the assistant costume designer from Scotland, who came up and put a hand on my shoulder, being like, is there anything I can do for you just now? The wellbeing officer was the costume designer that wasn't even on set. They were at base, and that's what was there. And when the director came out and says, "You all right?" She said, "I thought I'd be so happy, and all I want to do is cry. I don't want to be here. I hate myself. I hate everything I'm doing." And he went, "Everyone goes through this. We're going to do your close-up in 5 minutes." I left set, called Katrina, and cried down the phone because I was like, I feel so powerless. This was before I got my mental health first aid training. The first thing I did when I got back was book the course because I was like, never again. And that happened September. So it's bad.
But you just don't. You just, like you say, fuck the film, fuck the story, because that's on the subject of that though. And I don't know if people are familiar with the Film and TV Charity. If you just Google that, they've got amazing resources around well-being, and if you're pulling together a set yourself, and also conversations with the right producer. I think if you can't find an individual, because this is still very new, this well-being coordination, well-being officer as a role, an individual role, like you just pointed out, was doubled up with somebody who wasn't even on the set. So I can understand that they're hard to find.
That's who I was thinking of the film. There's a woman, isn't it, and actually the writer who runs it now, runs lots of courses.
And on the Film and TV Charity, if you're financially struggling, you can also ask them for money.
Oh, nice. Did not know that. Right now,
This is the thing. People don't. A lot of people don't seem. I've had quite a few conversations. They're like, "Can I actually do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, they are there. They have a hardship fund. If you are struggling to pay your bills, you can apply for money from them."
And you come do it once every 4 years, so make sure you really need it now.
So that was
Good
for everybody
point.
listening. That was once every 4 years you can apply for it.
Your second question,
I just wondered what your coming off your comment about the collaboration in Scotland, feeling like people are like, let's put together my experience here, your experience here, and create something like that. I keep talking in rooms with execs about writers' rooms, or the climate of writers' rooms that don't seem to exist here, exists a lot in America, and I'm finding that what happens, which surprises me, is that they were saying that new writers on their first big commissioner tend to want to work alone, and they prefer to work alone with them with just a script editor. And I'm like, I don't know. I just want you to talk.
I think that's rubbish. Sorry, because we did a writer's room for a project a couple of years ago, and everyone sat, and we just chose 4 women writers, and it was brilliant. I mean, it didn't get commissioned because it was too good. And it was actually about banking, but it was about the banking world actually, etc. And it was a joyous experience. But it was actually a lot of the agents of those writers were like, "Oh, I'm not sure about this. How do we work out?" It's all about copyright and owning. And I was like, no, but everyone wants to collaborate. It's supposed to be funny. It's just really good, isn't it? That's why,
writer rooms.
So keep going.
In the UK, writer rooms I think they find them difficult here, because in America, there's a whole other system. So in order to even be in a writer's room, you need to be part of the Writers Guild often. And in order to be part of the Writers Guild, you need to have a certain number of hours to be able to qualify to join the Writers Guild. And it's the same with any job. One of my best friends is a script supervisor that works in the States. And she had to do a number of hours on short films and other stuff before she could join her union.
Is that in America or
in America? And it's like that for any role. So with a lot of their crewing up, what they want to know is that you're part of the union, and certain jobs you can only apply to if you're part of the union. And so that's how a lot of their rooms work as well. The other thing about American writers' rooms is it's a job in the sense of you are booked out for a certain amount of time. You're guaranteed salary. The money is way better, but the costs are a lot more as well in America. They don't have free healthcare. Rent is more expensive. So I think it all does balance out. So the difference with there and here is because it's unionized over there, and everyone has to be part of the union. It's a system, and that's why they could strike and create change. Whereas here, if our writers went on strike, there's no way of getting all our writers to go on strike in the same way, because there's no repercussions if you go and take a job while the strike's on. the way writers' rooms work here is different. There's a few different things. So like when I did We Are Lady Parts, that was technically a development room. So we went in knowing we weren't actually going to be writing any of the episodes because it's 25-minute episodes. Nida was going to write all of them. So what we were going in and doing is we were having essentially a development room. We were basically working out all the character storylines. We just talked for a week. We got paid for that. It was so much fun. And it's essentially like a hive mind, and it's amazing. It's the best process ever. When I did season 1, I had never done any telly before. I didn't have an agent. Nida literally just emailed me, said, hey, you want to be in this room? And I said, hell yes. And then when this season 2 room happened, so season 1, we had a mix of men and women. Everyone was Muslim, different ethnicities, but it was a mix of genders. Season 2, she was more strategic and said, I want an all-female room. So she got all-female room. I was one of 2 writers that was invited back from season 1, and everyone else was new. And when I tell you, that was the best experience of my life, just all those women. I mean, I remember on day 1, we were all kind of sizing each other up, going, like, I'm not quite sure who you are. And by the end of it, we were in tears that we had to be separated. We got a WhatsApp group that we still talk on, all of us. And the thing is, I think knowing you're going into that room and knowing that you're not actually going to be writing any of that, there's a level of ego for some people where they would have to kind of go, I'm here to help someone else, right? And I love that process. I say to my agent, like, if there are development rooms, I'm so happy because I love talking about story and I love helping people work out story. But I can understand people that want to ensure they have a script that they're writing. Writers' rooms, in terms of scripts and stuff, they're much smaller. Usually the production knows, okay, we're going to have 6 episodes, and we'll maybe have like 3 or 4 writers for that. Sometimes you might lose a writer in the process because they're not quite the right fit. But they're much smaller kind of room. In America, their seasons are 20 episodes and stuff. There's more episodes to kind of dish out to people. So I think it's harder to have a structure that works here because we don't have all the checks and balances that we have in America. But I agree with Nikki, where I think we are all in this industry because we love collaboration, right? If we wanted to do our own thing, we'd be off writing novels as writers. You can go off and you can sit in your room and you can do that, and you just have to deal with your editor, maybe your agent. But the reason we do this is because so many voices come in, and that makes what we're making better. Yeah. I think as a writer, you know what your temperament is. Some writers enjoy doing their own thing, but a lot of writers, they want to be in rooms, and sometimes maybe it is the agent saying it's not quite right the career move for you.
But I think there has to be more collaborate, more writers' rooms, creative because
so low felt.
I know exactly.
You are speaking to different people's experience.
But also, it's really good. That's why some of the American shows are so good because they have that different opinion. It's not just one person's opinion. And I think we ours was quite a lot of development. We came up with characters, and it was just a really good week of like thinking about stories that didn't work. Maybe they did work, brought them back. It was just. I think it's really
so much fun, and you don't feel alone.
Especially up here. I think if you feel alone, exactly. And I think this, definitely up here, there should be more writers' rooms now where people from different backgrounds, like performance and stuff, you have a different. I think it's really important. I think it's really important to keep pushing it. Actually,
it comes down to money.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. It comes down to money. Yeah. So often it's about what they can afford. So I know someone who made a comedy thing for ITV. I did a sensitivity read on all the scripts for them. So the writer on that told me that he wanted a development room. Even though he was writing all the episodes, he did want a development room, but they couldn't even afford the development room because the budgets were so low. So it comes down to money because at the end of the day, you need to pay the writers.
That'd be a presumably lower fee
than a script fee. Yeah. No, you'll probably get like a day rate for the days that you're doing in the room. And then if you get commissioned to write the script, you also get the script fee. So that would be on top of your sort of day rate. But that's the thing, in America, you'll have a much higher salary. Even a writer's room, an assistant in a writer's room would probably have a better salary than what we would get as a day rate as writers in a room here. I assume. I don't know exactly.
Well, I know a story, but it was during the strike, and people were desperate for writers to come in. And a friend of mine lives out there, and his friend is a writer, and she was offered $7,000 for 2 days to come in and write. But if she'd have done that, she'd have broken the strike. So it's like, where do you then stand when the strike ends?
Well, she wouldn't have worked again.
Exactly.
She would have been blacklisted. She
exactly.
would have been hired again after the strike.
So he, that amount of money in that moment when nobody's getting anything, but he was very much like, really think about how you're doing this. But it's that thing of power, right? Of how they use it and manipulate it.
The other thing about the writers' rooms in America is often the writer will follow the script from start to finish, and we don't have that here. And I think I know of writers that have never been on a set, and I just, well, how the hell can you be writing for screen if you've never been on a set? In America, as a writer, there is a pipeline where you can go from writing a script to directing to doing other stuff, because you essentially can take your episode, be on set while they're filming it, be in the edit suite while at points when they're editing it. You can see every part of the process. And there are a lot of writers who have started in rooms, and then they might still be writing, but they'll get the odd episode on the show here and there, because they might not have done any formal directing training, but they've gotten the training through just being able to see how their words turn into images. And I think that actually, if we had more of that process here, we would definitely have more directors as well from communities that may not traditionally end up going to like film school and stuff.
It's true.
I just want to say something in defence of production and commissioning, and that like they're all aware of this, and there's usually somebody at the very, very top. So it's actually the people that we want all the same things as everybody else wants, and it is about being the people that we talk to.
It's the gatekeepers, yeah.
Yeah,
It's always the
absolutely.
gatekeepers. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it, because
Oh yeah, there's loads of great people.
Production companies and the producers that you speak to at production companies, most of them genuinely want to see a huge change, and they invest in talent. But at the end of the day, they still need to go to the people right at the top and get the commission, and that's where the problem is.
and they're worried about their salaries.
Yeah.
And again,
That was just somebody going for a pee. Totally fine.
then they also have, like, it's a shame because production companies, they have a slate, so they've got lots of things to work on. So while they might be like so passionate about you and your idea and what it can do to change the industry, they also need to be a bit kind of foster the ones that might be something that's been done a million times before, with the whole thing being realistic and being like, this could be the one, that this is probably going to be the one that gets commissioned. And so then they might be they can't be disappointed when their work gets commissioned, but there is an element of like they gotta make sure that they're working as well. So you can kind of be like, I know you're developing me and I know you're championing me, but I know that like the other thing you're working on, which is a pile of pish that we've seen 15,000 times before, is going to be the thing that gets commissioned. And then you kind of have to be like, well, bad luck and stuff. It's just annoying because you have these relationships with these people and they champion in you and you love what they've done for you as well, but it's still an element of like, I hate that we have to exist together with a really great relationship when things that you're doing is also complicit in how things are carrying on without any change. I mean, if they were like, if it's easy to be like, okay, if you really want to be brave, your salary to take a risk, only develop things that you think are going to change, but then they've got to have their company go on, and it's just understanding that and knowing that you as the freelancer at the bottom of the chain is always going to be the one that gets screwed.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. That's a great point to raise, Emma, because I think actually there's so many good people working in organisations that are funded and in production companies who are happy to take meetings and they want to meet you and they want to develop you, and like Sarah says, there's a balancing act to be struck. I don't think anyone, just to be super clear for our listeners, there's no like top evil like mwahaha. Maybe there is, I don't know. Like maybe there's an occasional mwahaha mustache twirling evil person. But for the most part, I think there's lots of push and pull, and people are working towards, slowly but surely working towards.
I actually put my foot in it
positivity.
with someone. I've got a relationship at a production company. I knew there was rumours through the grapevine there was going to be a commission that was a commission that was going to be a new comedy in Scotland with two very, very famous white straight men. And I said to him, I was like, see if I've heard this is going about. I swear to fuck, see if this happens, I'm going to flip a fucking table. And he's like, oh, Sarah, that's mine. and I was like, is it? And he's like, is it? And he's like, here's episode 1. I went, I'm not watching it. And then he's just like, we've got a commission. It's going to be on BBC One. And I was like, I'm really happy for you, but I fucking hate you and everything you stand for. And he's like, that's fair, Sarah. So like, it's we're give and take. They know you're frustrated. They just got to work too.
We've got about 8 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes left. Oh,
Bam.
there we go.
Hands right up.
A question for the writers, because I think the big frustration that I have is that there's writing and there's the business of writing. And by that I mean, if you write for theatre, you could go away and write a script and present it to someone and be like, look at the thing I wrote. Whereas film and television is, I've got an idea and I want to write the script, which is my medium, but now I have to put it into prose, which is not my medium.
Yeah.
So how do you balance those two things? Because I think you could be great at writing prose and not be a good script writer.
So-
be a great script writer and terrible at writing.
The thing that a producer explained to me quite early on when I had a similar frustration, but I was like, well, just let me write the bloody script and then people will see how good it is. The hard thing was you can't keep working for free. And it takes a lot of time to write a script. And once you have a couple of good samples, the reason that the treatment, as painful as it can be, is the thing that goes out is because that month, 2 months, 3 months, however long it'll take you to write the script, you still need to be earning money to pay your bills in that time. And we have very few avenues through which we can just get funding to let us just write. So that part is part of the business of like just being able to sustain yourself. And maybe just making peace a little bit with the fact that, you know, it's about you being able to survive, and it's also about you giving yourself the space to go, I should be paid for my writing. I should be paid to develop this. When I started developing the Film 4 project, actually, I was dying to write the script. My producer, she kept saying, no, you're not writing the script. And I said, please just let me write it. I'm free. I have a part-time job. I can do it. No, you're not doing it. You're going to get development money. Because the other thing is, that script could then go into development and it could change completely. So you've spent all that time where you've not been paid writing a script, which could be a completely different thing. I mean, the heart of it will probably stay the same, but you might never use that script. So it really is about you being able to, one, know your worth, and two, getting people to invest in you and invest in your work. Sorry, that's a really shit answer. What you want, but it's about you getting paid what you should be paid. We need universal basic income, basically.
My God, yes. Sorry.
We did a pilot in Ireland, and I think it was very successful, where they picked a handful of people who worked in the arts and they paid them a universal basic income. Google it; it'll come up.
Yes.
And it worked. It worked for them, I think. I don't know if they're going to continue doing it, but that's what we need in the arts here. Is we have so many people that could really help make Scotland this really vibrant place, but we're at that point where things are developing, and in order to not lose all those good people, we need them not to be worrying about how am I going to pay my bills.
Yeah.
And once you stop worrying about how to pay your bills, you're a better artist, because you're not in survival mode anymore. You have the freedom to be creative. The rest of this.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have any questions before we finish up? We are running out of time, and I really don't want to cut into the networking session.
Yes, the conversation can continue in the bar, which will be open.
Absolutely. No, it's open continuously.
Well, gosh.
because there's a show on tonight.
There's a show on tonight,
So the
yes.
bar is open. Yeah, usually I would ask my favourite question, which is, what does the phrase persistent and nasty mean to you?
Well, you just asked it.
So I just asked it. So I'm just going to see if anybody's got like anything they want to chuck in really quickly, because we've got like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Year
we
of
got
the feral.
Feral.
Year of the feral.
love it.
It can be good, bad, indifferent.
I think persistent is a brilliant word, because I think that's what you have to be. I think you can be nasty with a smile, which means they're not sure that you're nasty, but you are persistent. Gorge.
I must have answered this.
You
question.
have
answered this
question.
I
We
don't
can
know what
totally,
my
like,
answer was.
That'll be interesting to see if it's
So I don't
different.
know if it'll match up. But that was pre-pandemic times. Things have changed. We have been through it since then. For me, I guess persistent and nasty, and actually everything you guys do, is about knowing yourself and being confident in what you want to put out there. So not being influenced by what's in or anything like that. It's just at the core of yourself knowing this is what I'm about and this is what I want to do, and just following that through.
And the hailstones have just arrived in that moment. Like, couldn't be more perfect. Yes, the power. Thank you to our incredible panel.
Huge
Yes.
round of applause. Thank you also to Short Circuit and the lovely Abby from Short Circuit.
Thank you to all of you for joining,
And thank you to the Tron. Thank you to the Tron Theatre.
thank you. Keep going.
And that's the difference. That's the balance.
Let Creative Scotland hear that.
You can find out more about what we do at persistentandnasty.co.uk, and you can book for the upcoming coffee mornings if you'd like to join us for one of those. And just a reminder for all of you here and for our listeners, Persistent and Nasty is an intersectional, inclusive space for all women and for all marginalised identities. You want to come hang with us, you're more than welcome. Our key mantra is just don't be a dick. So find out, follow us on socials. Follow us on socials at Persistent Nasty on Twitter and at Persistent and Nasty on Instagram.
And you can follow us on TikTok, but I mean, who's doing that?
Elaine's in charge of TikTok.
And it's shite. Thank you, everybody, and until next time, lovely listeners,
Stay nasty.
Yay!